If I weren't allowed to talk about it, if there were a death penalty, I would die for it. It was a reality. I had the feeling that I had dreamed my life before, and then I woke up in this light.
Frau Wiesler, Sie hatten vor
Miss Wiesler, more than 20 years ago you had a near-death experience in the course of a severe skin disease, which has changed your life sustainably to this day. First of all, I would like to ask you to describe how this disease came about at the time and under what circumstances your near-death experience occurred.
Mit meiner Schwester am 24. Dezember waren wir auf einer schönen.
I was with my sister on December 24th on a beautiful hike in the snow. We came to a farm and put our fingers in the little calves' mouths so they could suckle them. And we petted them and so on. And then one of them scratched my finger a little bit. But I didn't notice. I put my finger in the snow, and then we went on and took a wonderful walk. A few weeks later, I didn't feel well anymore. I was on a walk again with a woman, and I thought, now I'm going to die. I was weak, and then I got a fever, and then the rash began on my hands and feet.
Because of this infection?
Because of this infection. And it took about 3 or 4 days until we found out that it was an autoimmune disease, a Stevens-Johnson syndrome. And then they had to give me cortisone. And I should have gone to the hospital, but I said I wouldn't do that. I don't want to go to the hospital. I'm staying at home. I had to call my general practitioner every day to see how I was doing. And my sister also looked after me. And even before it all started, my consciousness began to change. I was often... The dreams were so extreme. I had dreams of my grandmother. I always liked her very much. And she gave me... I don't know, there was a kitchen in my dreams. We cooked. The whole past and the future was there at once. And it was somehow... weird.
Were those particularly realistic dreams?
Yes, very realistic. I remembered all these dreams, and at that time, I don't know why, I had already written in diaries beforehand. I filled 5 diaries.
With the dreams?
Yes, with everything that happened to me at that time.
How did it come to the actual near-death experience?
Well, I became very weak because of the disease. I was also in pain. And then, one afternoon, I sat down on the floor of my office and wanted to paint a picture. And then, everything just stopped. Apparently, I fell unconscious and I left my body. I was in front of this tunnel, as they say, and then I was afraid to go through there alone. And I called my grandmother, and she was there immediately. And then she guided me, and I came into a very warm room where many deceased people were sitting. I recognized my mother's mother. I didn't know her before. I had only seen her on a photo. And there were other deceased people there. And I thought, what are they doing here? And then my grandmother telepathically said to me, "You don't belong here yet. You have come too early." And then I said, "Then I want to see everything." I just knew if I was there already, I wanted to see everything. But I didn't think that, I just asked the question. And at that moment, heaven opened up. I was in a light. It seemed to me like 1,000 suns. It didn't dazzle me. At the same time, I had a consciousness of 360 degrees. I was exhilarated to the point where the speed of light seems like snail speed. I raced through space. I passed galaxies, stars, solar systems, everything. And I had hundreds of questions. Everything was answered immediately. It was incredible. And suddenly, I was sucked into everything. And it was nothing, a dark nothing. And at that moment, when I came into the light, I was engulfed in such a huge love and acceptance. It was all love. At that time, I called it intelligence. I think it's this consciousness that we are.
Love.
Love and this consciousness, yes. And it was such a peace and acceptance as I've never experienced it in this world before. And then we went on. I mean, this feeling of I am was always present, my sense of self. But I was also huge and a part of the big picture. And then I went back to the nothing. It was a darkness, a compressed emptiness that contained everything. There was everything in it, but everything was compressed. An existence. And this nothing I perceived as everything. And when I was there, I saw, or I was shown a ladder, 3 ladders. And I saw where my father will stand when he dies, when I will die, when my mother dies. I saw all of that. And it really came to be that my father died before and my mother after. And I also know when I will die.
The ladder, was that a picture where you saw your father higher?
It was not like that. It was the other way around. I saw my father lower and my mother higher and me even further away. But he jumped off first. And then I was shown my life. That I had done what I could. And what I could not do was all right. And I was not judged or rated. It was like, in view of the whole universe and this journey, it was not important. And then they asked me, "Do you want to stay or do you want to go back?" And because I felt such a compassion, such a love, and that you don't have to be afraid, and everything was so beautiful, I said, I have to go back to the people. I want to tell the people that they do not have to be afraid of death, of dying. And then there was a bang. And for me, it was the Big Bang. And then a gleaming light went back in the direction of Earth. And then I woke up in this narrow body.
How was it when you returned to the body?
That was sheer horror. It was really a nightmare. Felt incredibly tight. And I was in pain again. But I was so happy and so animated by all that I had been allowed to experience that I started to draw. And in these 3 days, I do not know anymore what happened to me. I lost touch to reality. I was simply in the now and could not grasp what it had done to me. And then I just drew, and a beautiful poem was created. Because I was so touched, and I still remember the poem started with, "Silently I marvel at the greatness and the wonder." And I still get teary-eyed when I say that because I'm so touched. And I was so happy, but then again this feeling of this body, and yes, it was simply not describable.
You recounted earlier that you had a phase with very intense dreams that you also wrote down. How was this near-death experience in its quality? Was it comparable to these intense dreams, or was it completely different?
No, it's not comparable. It really is something completely different. And it was so deep inside me. If I weren't allowed to talk about it, if there were a death penalty, I would die for it. It was a reality. I had the feeling that I had dreamed my life before, and then I woke up in this light, in this consciousness. And actually, afterwards, it was the first time I had the feeling I came into those worlds voluntarily, when I was asked if I wanted to come back. Before that, I hadn't felt rooted here. I actually always wanted to leave.
You said you saw the deceased. Was this a seeing comparable to how we see each other when we sit opposite each other? Or was it more a perception of energy, where you did not see the other physically, but recognized the energy of the person?
I would say there was a kind of transparency. They were somehow different, but you could still recognize them. And I have the feeling the reason why they were there is because when we die, there's always someone there to pick us up. We are never alone. No.
And they were familiar people?
Yes, my grandmother and also relatives, aunts and so on.
You also told us about your need to see everything.
Yes.
Can you describe this feeling a little bit more? Was it a thirst for knowledge? Or was it more the feeling of wanting to go on towards home, to the center?
No, it was pure despair. Because I was despairing in this world, because it is so brutal. It has always been too loud for me, too brutal. And I wanted to find out why it is possible there. Why are we here at all? And why do we suffer like this? Why do we have wars? Why do we destroy nature? Why don't we feel the animals, nature, how it suffers? And that was my only goal. And when I realized where I am, I thought, now I want to see everything. I want to know why we suffer in this world. Why does this happen?
In your youth, you have always struggled with God. why he allows these things to happen.
Yes, always. For me, I was always quite aggressive
Towards God.
towards God, and I really took that on because I wanted to know. And I read spiritual books early on. I was with masters, and in a school I wrote my vision where I wanted to go. And that was the only thing that really interested me here on earth.
Before this interview, you wrote to me about this experience of love that you described now. Quote, "Our sufferings evaporate like a drop on a hot stone in view of this immeasurable love." Was that the central experience, that actually, in view of the greatness of life, everything becomes relative, even the greatest suffering?
Yes, that's right. When we become aware of what we are, when we leave the body, then it is no longer important what happened when we were here. And yet, I have the feeling that we are invited to be as attentive and loving as possible with everything. And what was given to me is also this compassion. But I have that with everything, with every plant and every animal, with every human. But it is very difficult to live that here. For me, when I go into nature, I just look at a snail or a plant or a tree, and without judgment. I don't necessarily say the tree is an oak, but just being there and arriving in the now.
So, not analytically.
No, no.
You have always been a sensitive person in search of possibilities to express these finer things. Do you have the feeling that after this near-death experience you have become even more sensitive?
Yes. Afterwards, I had so much trouble to stay in this body. It took at least 4 years. I always stepped out of the body during the night, and in the morning I slipped back into the body through the roof window of my 3-room apartment and woke up again. And this happened many times. Every night I stepped out. God showed me the whole universe. And again, I learned and I had questions. And the whole process wasn't over after the near-death experience. It went on. And that is still the case today. And that makes me happy. But it's not very easy.
And when you compare the quality of these out-of-body experiences, these nightly trips, to the quality of the near-death experience, was this indeed still an outstanding experience?
Yes. I would say the near-death experience as a whole was much stronger. But because I said I want to see everything, it was like I was given little bites that I was capable of processing.
You told us immediately after the experience you lived in the present for a long time. How did that feel? Could you talk to someone about this? Did you want to?
I had a girlfriend, and I'm very happy that I had her. A few days later, we went out to eat. And I told her to pinch me to see if I still existed. And it was clear to me that I was there. But when I was alone, I lost myself in the now, in this state of being, in this love. And when something came to me, someone, then it clicked again, and I was completely back again.
And today, do you cope well with this sensitivity?
No, it's not easy. I can't open up to that many people about how I feel. And if I may say this, when I went to the city for the first time to buy something after my near-death experience, everything was lit up. I saw straight through everything. I saw the people, how they suffered, and I couldn't take the suffering from them. It hurt me so much, this compassion. And the children seemed happy to me, so free, and also the animals. And nature did me well, that I could always go back to nature again and again.
And your fellow humans seemed remote-controlled.
Yes, unfortunately. Thank God there were some that I could tell with time. But many judged me and said I had to go back and I had karmic things to do. But what I experienced gave me the freedom of never having to do something again. We are part of this divine, and it doesn't tell us what to do. We just belong to it. I have no dogmas. It is as it is.
Do you still have the feeling of wanting to fulfill a certain task?
Yes. If possible, to take people's fear of death, so they know that we stay in this love and that this love embraces us. I have no idea what this paradise should look like, but I'm sure we don't just fall out of it. We are part of it, and we are always carried by it, in whatever form.
A sense of belonging.
A sense of belonging, carried in this love and peace and trust. It is really an incredible experience.
One can have the confidence, one doesn't have to be afraid of death. Is there another special message, something you took from these experiences and want to pass on to others?
That we always should try to find silence, to feel what is inside of us, because we have it inside of us, and we could experience it, be our true selves, without having to have a near-death experience. It would be really nice if we could come closer to this love for the whole planet.
Thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you very much. Thank you.